we touched on social media marketing in the beginning, and a lot of people listening have asked, do I need to be on social media? And the answer is unequivocally yes.
Yep.
You got to be on social media. You have to be on every medium available to you. Now, I took a really trial by fire approach to social media, and it worked out well because I had a really aggressive style of filming things, and I wasn't really afraid to get in front of the camera. And that's not common. You know, we realize that's really not for everybody. So the question is, at what point do you need to have someone help you with it? And is that even the right expense to make in the first place?
Yeah, you know, it just coming back to that, and I think it's interesting. You're really good on camera, and you have funny videos, and you have, you know, engaging this and that and the other. Some of the stuff that I've also learned is we really haven't figured out the one key or the one thing that all of a sudden, like, I'm going to go viral every single time I post something. I've posted things I thought was funny as hell and amazing, and they got me nothing. And then I've chopped up old videos, and I have nearly 2 million hits on, or 2 million views on that. But even just some of our, you know, listeners who have been writing in, you know, you can do a lot on a cell phone, and you don't have to be amazing if you appeal to the people who are watching, even in the most basic of ways. We have a gentleman who came up with an invention on trucking, and he's just a normal guy showing, hey, this is what it does. It saves your knuckles. Here you go. Right. And he's got a whole built-in trucking audience, and he got more followers in 3 days of him posting his one video than I've got in a year and a half of posting 70, 80 videos. So, Dan, I don't know if you have any insight, if you want to comment on it. I know you've done a bunch of social media marketing, but is it true there's just like you can try to find something that hits and then replicate it, or it's just random as hell?
Well, think of the algorithm like a river, right? If you're going to go fishing, and let's say you caught a nice big old snapper at this one crappie, rocked outcrop. Yeah, there you go. Doesn't mean you're going to get a fish there every single time, right? The algorithm is this constantly changing thing on whatever medium it is that's responding to a huge database of millions upon millions of people's behavior and how they're interacting with the platform. And I can say there are definitely things that you learn that you shouldn't do. Like there's best practices, right? Same with, let's say, fishing, right? I'm just coming up with this analogy now. But there's certain things that you're not going to do, right? You're not going to put a Band-Aid as the lure because that's not going to get any fish. It's not tasty, right? But it doesn't mean just because you have a worm, you're going to get what you want, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So basically, you can have all the right things and put them in all the right spot over and over, but unless the right fish are swimming by that like your lure, you're not going to hit that day.
It could be the wrong time of day.
Yeah.
It could be because kids got out of school early that day and now they're outside.
Right.
Right? It could be because there's a big boxing match that night.
Right. And you said there's some things that you shouldn't do. Can you think of anything offhand that you know to not do?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think there's certain things that are specific to each platform, right? You know, if you're trying to make something for a vertical platform, having horizontal footage is going to be tough.
Right.
Because it's just going to look like it's not meant for TikTok or
I was guilty
Instagram
of that
Reels.
in the beginning, and then especially because you get burnt out of trying to film something. You're like, I'm just going to use what I shot for YouTube on my TikTok or whatever it is, and then you end up putting it and you have to fill the black on the top and the bottom with some words, and it looks like you don't know what you're doing and you're not into it.
It's weird. I've seen those type of videos take off occasionally.
Yeah.
But in my experience, it has never worked out for me. Doing the black bars on the top and bottom, even a little bit, it's always just been a deterrent for some people. But it also goes to show you that, or a good note there is, for instance, security cam footage of something appalling happening. Worst footage you've ever seen, black and white, but you're still glued to the screen. You know, the form is important, yes, but really it's a matter of subject and what's happening and does it lock eyeballs. It's just you need to eliminate every chance of deterring the audience. and
100%.
filling up that whole entire vertical screen. That's a really easy first step to grab that audience. But let's take a step back before we get into the technical aspects of this. So candidly, Dan is brand new to TorkStrap. I brought him on because, I created a system of social media reach that served me well for some time. But quite honestly, creatively, I was tapped out, and time-wise, I was tapped out. And I realized that it's time to, it's a do what you do best, sub the rest mentality. And I wanted to find somebody smarter than me. And that's what I did with Dan. And Steven and I have really been sifting through a lot of resumes. We've had to kiss a lot of frogs, but our eyes have been open to this world of what someone could really help your business do and honestly justify their wage in bringing the company revenue and just open up opportunities for upside for everybody that are just really exciting. But I want to ask you, Steven, on this journey of bringing in a Dan, like what have you noticed that, or what would you say is the most impactful thing, important thing about being holistically present in this marketing aspect?
Yeah, I think while going through the interviews, you and I had a lot of discussion after the fact, and a lot of the points you brought up were more on the creative side, the editing side, and maybe more an artistic approach that I personally don't have and never have claimed to have. But my perspective after these interviews were more on broad scale business successes, if you will, if everything goes to plan. That could mean obviously increased sales, on the bare bones level. It could mean added partnerships with brands that are symbiotic with yours. It could mean, long-term deals with companies that, maybe you never had the chance to be in at your scale, but just, broadening your reach through social media opens up whole new avenues. So I think there's a lot to say in the artistic approach and then also in the broad scale of the business. I think if you do it right, you can achieve a perfect relationship between, sales, marketing, and, the overall company in general.
They really do go hand in hand. That's what we're noticing now. Like, and we even told Dan, like when he's producing content that's really starting to get traction, Steven's inbox is going to be flooded with wholesale opportunities. My inbox is going to be flooded with partnership creative opportunities, whatever they are, and so is Dan's. So it really is like marketing as a small business. I'm going to call it a 4-finger approach. You have your social media. That's where you start. That's a low-hanging fruit. That's free. Do what you can, milk it get every little bit of milk out of it that you can on your own. And that can last you the first 3 years of your business. It certainly did mine. And then you have like email marketing. That's a big chunk of it. I would call that like 15% of your income. And then you have paid ads, which you're always going to need to run. You don't need to do it in the beginning, but you need to get ready to run paid ads. And then the fourth one is probably more like just kind of trickle in word of mouth, which isn't really that big, surprisingly. Yes, word of mouth is powerful, but it takes a ton of people talking to find customers that want to pull out their wallet just because they heard about something. So the word of mouth aspect doesn't really happen until you have, I would say, tens of thousands of units in a lot of really happy people's hands.
Yeah, and I want to drop it back for just 1 second to even something that I think a lot of listeners, we like to try to give the insight to what we had to do to get a certain thing as well. So let's take it back to, I just found a salesperson. I went through 50 resumes. I used Indeed and LinkedIn. It cost me about $300 per platform to make my posts. That was a couple weeks. So it was $600. Of those 50 resumes, maybe there were 10 decent people. Of those 10, 3 actually reached out personally. So for our fellow inventors out there who might be hiring a Dan or a Steven or whoever it is, like when you guys were going through these resumes, what is it that stuck out about Dan?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's the things they do beyond what is asked, right? So we talked about this at lunch, right, Dan? It's, first of all, you have your very bottom of the barrel people who don't complete. I'm talking about Indeed. You reached out on LinkedIn, which, that doesn't matter. But my experience on Indeed was you pose questions, softball questions, or maybe there's just pre-screenings they can take. What are your writing skills? Are they proficient? So on and so forth. So really, if they're not doing the writing test, if they're not proficient in their speaking, or if you can pose a couple questions that are very simple, tell me about your video editing experience. And if they just put like CapCut, or like iMovie with no explanation, you know that's not really for you. But it's the things they do outside of it. Dan, you can speak to this more, but I asked several times for you to follow up. What's going through your head when an employer says maybe follow up a little bit on what you're talking about?
Well, called me old school, but I think of when you work at a place, you work at a place with real people that you're looking in the eye and that you're going to trust someday and that you want them to trust you someday, right? So I think when you're applying for a job or just reaching out to somebody to collaborate in any way, you want to start with the basis of like, hey, look, I'm confident in what I can do and what I can bring to the table, but I'm also a guy that, or gal, or whoever you are, that you're going to want to hang out with or have lunch with in between shifts, or when it's a particularly tough week, or it's the holidays, or you're slammed, or you're not slammed enough. You want to be in the trenches with that person. So from the beginning, I want to show my best, put my best foot forward and be myself.
Yeah.
No, follow up to that is the importance of looking past a resume. Because I think initially I felt this way personally. I don't know about you guys, but you see a lot, not to discount your experience, but a lot of people did have maybe the same or more experience that you did. And if we just went on resumes alone, I don't think you'd ever get your perfect hire. Dan was chosen because he had the full package. He had the resume, but like Grant said, he hit every checkbox above and beyond what was asked. So
You learn a ton from a good FaceTime meetup as well, and just its personality, it's clicking with somebody, it's feeling a trust in them that they're not floating you full of a bunch of crap, because it's easy to put 30 words on a resume. But when you actually talk to somebody, and if there's a stutter in them when you ask them a question, and they're like, and you're like, okay, so there's a lot to be learned by a quick FaceTime call. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I was really generous with my Google Meets. Yeah. If I even thought somebody was, something, I'd be talking to my wife, this and that. Well, they only have a bachelor's degree in this and that. I'm like, I'm just setting up a call. That's all we can do, because you never know what you're going to uncover. And this really doesn't pertain to Dan at all. I mean, like Steven said, his resume was absolutely wonderful. But people in general, what I'm trying to say is you need help understanding, Marcus kind of mentioned this, you need help understanding how to hire this individual. Do it just like the way you've been hired in the past. You've all had jobs. You're working a 9 to 5, presumably. That's why you're listening to this podcast. You remember those difficult questions you were asked. They were asked for a reason. I think they're pretty basic and kind of lame. I think that they're dated. So I took my own approach, but don't be afraid to set up a second interview, maybe even a third if you need to. Throughout the evening, throughout the day, when you have random questions or scenarios come to your head, jot them down in your phone and then pose those in that round 2 interview. When you're a business as small as even TorkStrap, anything like that, this is a marriage at this point, because realistically, what you lack in the traditional benefits and things of that nature, you have to more than make up for with being realistic, with being cool, with being willing to help the people who help you participate in the upside of the business. And how you do that, I leave that to your discretion, but it's extremely important, and that's what you have to leverage as an employer in these interviews.
Well, and this is also a massive expenditure for most of us, is hiring somebody, right? Like on my side, I've said it many times before, I went the route of saving up money to be able to fund my own stuff. So I have a decent amount saved up. But this is a real expenditure now where I'm taking a leap of faith. I'm still not making money on my company. I am losing less because sales are getting better. But no, and I've just taken on a salesperson now where you're like, holy crap, this is now pulling from savings. And something I want to get out there to our fellow inventors, it's really easy to think I'm spending X amount and I need this person to bring in this amount tomorrow. And you just have to let go of, there's an onboarding process. There's a learning curve. In my case, I thought I was more retail ready than I am. And there's going to be months now that I'm going to have to wait for more product to come in and things. So I am now floating, and I'll be definitely open and honest with you. I might have jumped the gun a little bit on my hire by hiring a full-time salesperson who doesn't necessarily have a whole lot to sell right at the minute. He will, and it's going to be great, and I'm going to make my money back, all these things. But just for everybody out there listening, like whatever decision you make it slow. Like go through the resumes, do it properly, feel good about this. It's a huge expenditure. And on the flip side, just get ready that there's going to be a weird period inside you where you're like, oh God, I'm spending this much money and I needed this back. You're going to have to find a happy, like, hey, let them get into flow, let them understand you, let them understand your business. And then they're going to effing rock it. And that's when it's all going to come back.
For sure.
So
Dan, in your own words, how, in your experience, let's say, how do most companies generally operate a social media in the beginning? The good, the bad, and the ugly.
Well, it totally depends on what the aims of the company are, right? Sometimes it's a means to get into markets that they already aren't in. And sometimes that's not going to bear a lot of sales, but it will get your brand in different markets, and that could potentially benefit you down the road. Sometimes it's a glamour thing. You know, it scratches the back of the CEO to have cool videos, cool drone shots of your product. Maybe that's all it's for, right? I've worked for very expensive campaigns that ended up having 15 views.
Yeah.
A lot of money went into it, but the goal was not to go viral. There was a lot of demands from on top, and sometimes when you have a bigger budget, you end up pricing yourself out of the viral zone. You know, content on social media should be, in my humble opinion, organic to what you're watching, right? That's why Quibi didn't work out.
What was Quibi?
Quibi was that they were innovators. They designed premium television that was meant to be consumed on your phone. 4K, big-time actors, lots of production value.
Yeah.
But people, it was meant to be watched on the phone, but people wanted to see TikTok.
Right.
People want to see birds out of somebody's window dancing to some song, right?
Beating their head, I remember, yeah.
So I think, one thing that is important, and I think a lot of your listeners, and I think people I'm sitting with would agree, doing it yourself in the beginning is always very important, because these tricks of the trade, the definitely can do and definitely don't do list, it's going to be different for every sort of content and every platform, every product. Yeah. Maybe one influencer can definitely do a certain type of video while another one wouldn't be as successful for that. And you don't know until you try, right?
Yep.
And a lot of the assumptions that you make, maybe the first 6 months that you're doing social media, maybe some of them were wrong and you have to experiment. It's all stuff I've made earlier in my career. I would have edited, every year I would have had different notes on how to edit it, right? Because the platforms change, trends change, and you just learn, we shouldn't do that.
Mm-hmm. I think in the beginning, I think generally social media management, it's a pretty not well done aspect of most businesses. So for example, when you get on Instagram tonight, pay close attention to like the local dentist office in your neighborhood, their ad that comes up, or just their social media post on Facebook that you see organically, not an ad, but an organic post. Generally speaking, they're wishing everybody a happy 4th of July, or they're letting you know about their new chairs at their dentist office. That's nice. Or maybe they're letting you know that this month only 15% off all, denture repair. Okay, so long story short, it really sucks. Their social media just sucks balls. That's the most blatant way to put it. Now, why does it suck is because it's usually self-serving. They're trying to think of how can I get more customers to come in my door. When you get on Red Bull's social media, what do you think you're going to see? You really think you're going to see somebody cracking open a can of Red Bull talking about how it's,
see some guy skydiving.
You see a guy skydiving. You see a guy jumping from space to planet Earth, right? It's really a matter of looking at the content that you want to produce and think, is this for me or is this for them? Them being the audience. The eyeballs come first by thinking of them. The sales come later. The sales come as a byproduct. So I experienced a ton of sales early on because I had learned this, through YouTube, whatever, that think of the audience first. So I made a lot of construction humor, a lot of really universally accepted videos that fell into a niche of people who wanted a dopamine hit late at night when they're thumbing through TikTok, whatever it is, and they want to see some jackasses on a construction site doing dopey things. That got me a good following. From there, I parlayed that following into my strap videos. And I would target that very same audience, the rough and tough. I used to be one of them, the construction worker, chewing tobacco, spitting, swearing, all that good stuff. And then, we like to watch our funny videos at night. So I was able to parlay that audience, get them watching my strap videos. And I learned quickly that if I could get those guys talking crap about my straps, I could get a ton of views. And when I get a ton of views, although I may have got them initially for the wrong reason, because of the virality of the video, it starts landing on audiences that say, that's actually pretty damn cool. I'm going to buy it. And what happened was, after doing that for about a year and a half, I had like a year and a half run where I had a really good following and I could kind of sell to them on command. The audience kind of went dry. So I want to ask you, Dan, why do you think audiences would go dry in that scenario? Stop buying is what I mean by go dry.
Well, sure. I mean, there's the common sense, marketing things you would think like, oh, we've saturated this audience. They've seen all these videos. Maybe my videos are too similar, so it's not catching their attention. Maybe it's being targeted to the wrong audience, like people who aren't of the age of buying these products, right? Or it could simply be that the algorithm changed, right? Like a lot of times with these platforms, right, there will be some need, the board may want a certain thing and the engineers have an idea and then they tinker with the algorithm, not sure how it'll affect the behavior of their viewers and their relationship with the viewers. And overnight, everything can change. Right. So I think that experimentation is, the brands and the producers, the publishers, the influencers who get stuck on one way of doing things are the ones who are stuck and get stuck.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a follow-up to that, Dan. Besides being on the board of some of these social media companies, you're not really going to have a heads up on what's next or what's to come. What would you say is a proactive approach that, a business or an inventor or social media marketer can do to at least be prepared to take on the next thing, not knowing what it is?
Sure. I mean, just like trust your eyes and your ears and your nose, see what tickles you on social media, right? Notice what the feed is choosing to show you, because your understanding of what works on social media should be able to compete with anyone else's, because unless you're purely not you're looking at it at all personally or even as a business, if you're just hoping to have it run on autopilot, I think that's when you run into problems, right? I'll compare it to that river allegory I used earlier, right? You kind of always have to be steering, right? You don't know exactly how the tides are going to take you or how fast the current's going to be or what obstacles will be there. There are always going to be obstacles, and sometimes you're going to have to paddle harder and sometimes you'll just cruise. Yeah.
So that's great. For those of us who aren't ready to hire Dan and dumbing it back down to what can we do ourselves, like as brand new inventors, we've got our product, we're ready to rock it. We've just jumped on social media. One of the things that Grant said was, don't try to sell your product to people. Right now, people are so bored of being sold on something. You might be selling a lifestyle and your product's in it, or don't just tell people about your product. show them them in use, or be doing something and have it there being active and helping, or whatever it may be. Can you think of anything else we can help super first time? I just jumped on TikTok making my first video, and what should we do? Obviously, the vertical and horizontal is a big one. Mm-hmm. So holding your phone upright versus holding it sideways. And then what are some other good basics?
I don't want to answer this for you. I don't want to lead you, but I love the tip that you gave about the burner account. So like a market research aspect, where do they start? Maybe people are really analytical and they really want to know, which I wish I had done this in the beginning, but please.
Yeah, what's that mean?
Sure. I mean, if you want to learn how a certain subset of the internet is going to behave, you have to you have to immerse yourself into that culture, right? Mm-hmm. So if you look at my phone at any given day, many of them are retired, but I have different burner accounts for different sorts of content, whether it's sports, or history, or animals, or women's sleep robes, right? Mm-hmm. However niche you want to get. If you search for women's sleep robes every day for 3 days on a new Instagram account, that's all you'll get forever on that account. Right. It'll be burned in to public knowledge, like because all these advertisers and the algorithms, can see your public profile, right? Whether it's within that platform or. And I think it's a little bit different with data these days, that it's not just public knowledge. But anyway, that lasts, right? So when you start an Instagram that is only what you want to look for, you're going to get the freshest stuff. It's going to be, getting the stuff that they know, will satisfy the top consumers of that certain thing, right?
Okay, so that's a great idea. So basically, you're just finding out what is the hottest thing right now, and then you can use that to mirror off of that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, just get inspiration.
Yeah.
See what other people are doing. And a lot of times you'll say, oh, I could do that even better, right? It doesn't mean that they're nailing it, they are nailing it for that subset of the internet at that point.
Yeah. And just to reiterate, what he's saying is, you have your personal Instagram account, make another one, user 93620, no profile picture, anything. And in that account, search for the things you're trying to target. Mm-hmm. So, for example, if I wanted to convert to a camping audience rather than a construction humor audience, Dan would create a burner account, and in that, he would just pretend he's an eager, wanting to learn about camping type of happy camper, right? Where's the best places to camp in California? Best coolers for camping for 3 days. Just as many keywords and phrases as you can think of to put you in the mindset of that target customer who you want to hit. You kind of know your target customer. Obviously, if you're smelling, if you're selling a marijuana device, you know to start looking at Bob Marley crap. You kind of understand how to put yourself behind the eyes of that consumer, and then adopt that persona for a couple of weeks. The algorithm will give you way more insanely interesting suggestions than you could ever search out. I know when I'm trying to learn how to install a faucet on YouTube, I'll search it one day, and then I'll just leave it alone for a couple of days. And before I know it, the most idyllic video comes into my feed naturally, because that's how refined these algorithms are. And that's what you're going to learn with that burner account.
Well, and you brought up, Grant brought up, maybe not on the podcast, but we were talking about talking crap. And let's talk for a second the value of talking crap. I'm not good at it. I don't really like to do it to a certain level. I'm not going to trash talk other people as much. Should I? I mean, it's I could. You are a king at making people oddly uncomfortable with some of the things you say by doing nothing other than mislabeling it. And I think Dan even said something funny. It's like, hold something up and call it something different, and then get ready for a barrage of comments about how stupid you are for not knowing the difference between, a ratchet
bungee
strap.
And a ratchet.
Yeah. So what is the value in that?
Engagement.
Yeah.
These algorithms aren't reading what you're actually saying. Mm-hmm. They're not qualitatively seeing, well, he's getting a lot of engagement, but it's not positive.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
He's got
right?
50 comments, 100 comments.
Yeah. Say you went to McDonald's and got a Whopper, and you're going to get way more comments than you would have gotten. Now, there's better way. You don't necessarily have to make yourself look like you're ill-informed on how to live life. But you can you can drive engagement. Like, hey, let me know in the comments how you think I should do this next time, right? Ask a question. Get the audience invested, right? Like, I think there's two, you want to get your audience invested. And a great way to do that is, ask them a question to get them thinking, right? Make them actually an active participant in this video that is just playing on their screen. And secondly is to add value, like give them something interesting to think about, teach them something, surprise them, make them laugh, right? I think you mentioned these brands, the dentist who's like, hey, come in, happy 4th of July, everyone. That doesn't really add anything to anyone,
Yeah.
Have a funny video. Doesn't even have to have much to do with your brand, but you're thinking about how can I give value to this viewer?
Well, and
which would be like a video of teeth falling out and then a funny meme, right? Like that's something funny you might just lean over and show your wife. That's more value than a 15% off, 100 times more. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say, with that, with pushing the boundaries a little bit, maybe with some of that, and even if you have the most bland, the sky is blue post, people are going to throw hate into your comments. One thing, and we've brought it up beforehand, for us fellow inventors doing this, whatever you post, whatever product you put out there, you're going to get hate because they're just some people just suck. You got to let go of your ego and don't engage with those people because those people love engagement and you're gonna take too much real estate in your mind. So what type of people do you say is a good person to like engage with, to educate? Yours is a piece of shit. I'm not going to engage with that person. But somebody will say something where you're like, well, it's 1,200 pound load rating and this is how it works. I've done a lot of that where people are like, it can't hold crap. I'm like, well, it's a 1,200 pound load rating and this is what it does. So what would you say to those type of things? What's a good engagement?
Sure. I grew up watching sports, right? And you always kind of, when you hear about an athlete getting in trouble for doing something that any normal person might do, right? It's amplified, right? The spotlight is on them. And there's kind of a common understanding that there might be more responsibility when the spotlight is on you, whether fair or not. And I think when you're actively publishing videos, right, for consumption, you're taking on that responsibility in a way of being an elevated actor in this relationship, right? You never want to plumb down to the level of someone who's trying to hate, right? Because they could be the saddest person in the world trying to hate on everyone else. Mr. Glass from Unbreakable, whatever. So to answer your question of like when to choose to engage, I think it's when your point of view as a brand and your attitude and your vibe has a chance to show itself, be helpful, and not tarnish that brand, right?
Yeah.
When you see a brand fighting with somebody on Twitter, bad luck.
That's great advice. That's exactly the right answer. And it's if you can better your brand or you can educate your audience or you have a chance to change that comment into something where people are like, oh yeah, okay, it is kind of badass or it is this. That's great. That's a huge thing.
And no one's going to jump in and be like, great job, Marcus. You really showed him. No. But hundreds of people are reading that comment a day. And I've read those types. They make an impact. Even the tongue-in-cheek type of approach, like, hey, well, sorry, we couldn't help you. Maybe you have better luck at, Red Cross where you can get a free donation, but we don't give things away for free. Like, not necessarily being a smartass, but I think like Wendy's Twitter did that. The social media manager at Wendy's or operator at Wendy's, he or she just went ham with those tongue-in-cheek responses to hate. And they started going viral on like major news medias for being playfully poking and jabbing at these haters in a way where everybody kind of wins.
And speaking to some of our comments that we've seen in social media in the past, I know Grant does a great job of educating someone if they, say something about your product that's not true at all. Grant has in the past said, hey, no, that's not true. This is actually how it is. And then a trickle down effect to that is, on future posts, you see people using Grant's words, replying to other people in the comments, and you've done your job with that one video, but it does have that trickle down effect where you did your job, and now it's carrying over in that sense.
It's a good point.
I was just going to say, and there's nothing better as the owner of the account and product, to watch other people fight for you or just fight against stupid comments. You know, somebody will say something, this person's like, oh, you know, and it, like you were saying, Dan, it plays into the engagement. You might have 30 people comment on one thing and they're all just at it with each other and it's like, oh yeah, keep going. And you can keep your hands out of that and not make it take up too much of your own real estate in your mind. So that's great.
So for TorkStrap, Dan, what is your recommendation to find that new audience in this particular use case? We've talked about the general ways to hunt down and do market research, but what are you thinking there?
Well, you know, like we've talked about before, right? You know, you can have a video that goes as viral as, you know, could be, where you're telling all your friends, like, hey, look, I got this many millions of views. Well, guess what? There's, you know, 5 billion more people online who could be seeing this content, right? And if you get 9 million people or 20 million or 100 million people to watch a video, the next video that goes viral could be 100 million different people. You don't know, right? So I think my strategy is to continue the high quality and the organic spontaneity of the brand, right? You know, this isn't some account that needs a total reinventing of the wheel, right? I just think that there's people who don't know what the product is yet. And like you said, if we make some engaging content that will pique their interest and they make an association with this nice product and how it can be helpful, I think we can satisfy their viewing process and then satisfy our sales numbers.
And, you know, a lot of us, we have a decent amount of footage. We've taken footage, and I'm sure a lot of fellow inventors out there might have iPhones full or phones full of stuff they've taken. Don't be afraid. I think it's a huge thing. Like you said, you can take the same footage and you can chop it up differently. You can add some fresh music. You can add some fresh texts. You can, you know, whatever it is. And it's not like you have to reinvent the wheel to do this. You can use what you already have. You just need to spend the time or find a Dan to help you re-edit that into something that's amazing. And just to be open with everybody, you know, some of my videos are hitting at like 3,000 views, and probably I'm pretty good around the 5,000 to 10,000 views, which isn't a ton. It's nothing, but I took a minute-long video. I did nothing more than made it 15 seconds, so I took 2 pieces out of that video. My latest video is up to 1.8 million. Woo! Why? How? I don't have a damn clue. All I know is my sales blasted that week. It kicked ass. I did nothing more than take something that I had and made it shorter. And in your case, you know, I know Grant's got a couple years of footage now, and you're just going to chop the crap out of that up and make some freshy, right? That's going to be your start.
Yeah. And like, I think the most important thing about what you said is like, I did it, right? I chopped it up and I produced it and I published it. Yeah. That's the important part.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I've seen videos be published and get a few 100,000 views, then the same exact video, nothing different, everything the same, 20 million the next time, right?
The next time you post it?
Next time I post it, not a single thing different.
Wow.
And on platforms. Like that same 1.8 million video that's on Instagram right now, I think has like 4,000 views on TikTok. Why? Who knows? Same video, same music, same blah, blah, blah. So that's also a good post to all your platforms. You know, don't shy away from one because you're like, oh, this one may not have as many viewers. You don't know that. Like I've killed it on a YouTube when I thought YouTube's not going to be the right place for this video, and that was the one that got me like 30,000 views and my sales went up. So also when you're in the mode of posting, and you can attest to this, I'm sure, it takes you an extra 1 minute to copy paste post to, you know, copy paste post TikTok, copy paste post Instagram, or whatever it may be, but a whole different audience, whole different time set, whole different algorithm, whole different whatever. definitely hit as many of those as you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a numbers game, right? There's no way to guarantee a video will go viral.
Yeah.
Right. The way, I like to think of digital media the same way as people tend to think of, maybe not anymore, but the movie industry, right? You don't want to make a $70 million action film because it's not going to seem as big budget as the big budget films. And it's not going to be the same vibe as some indie film that cost $2 million to make, right?
Right.
With digital media, you should either be making something that looks like someone's friend sent it to them or that they could have made on their own, or you want to make something that's spectacular and it's can't miss, the biggest budget, most thought out, takes 6 months to edit it video. I think those are if you do that, you have a good chance of success because it's going to stand out because you're putting so much effort into it. But in the middle, no man's land.
It's no man's land. I made a mistake in the beginning when I started posting to like TikTok, Instagram, these different things. I would make my video, and then on the platform itself, I would add the music because each one had different music rights. Maybe I could get, the Beastie Boys on this one, but it wouldn't let me have that on the next one. So I spent a lot of time sitting there trying to find a good song. What I changed that to, and I know CapCut's hot right now, I'm sure there are other ones, but I found like some royalty-free music. So I was able to edit the whole video, put my music in, and then I could just copy that across the whole entire. I think that's a good time-saving thing. Is there anything else that...
Do you think that affected your views?
Probably. I don't know.
The one that's going viral right now, was that some royalty-free generic?
It's absolutely generic music. So, it's not some hot song that's the latest, whatever
that's
it is.
my inclination is to say that it didn't matter.
Yeah.
A lot of people think, oh, TikTok's, effing me over because I'm not using their music or I didn't use the right song. But I have not seen that to be the case. And also people will say, I spoke to a lot of social media managers, men and women, and they've said, well, I noticed that when you edit Instagram Reels on the Instagram app, they do better. But I have not seen that to be the case.
I haven't either.
I've thrown a ton of stuff at the wall as far as trying to appease these platforms, and it just doesn't matter. Just get good content out there, copy and paste it. To reiterate, we post on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube Shorts because they all support vertical short form content. A 30-second vertical video that is engaging and educating or entertaining or funny will do well on any of these platforms. Not necessarily, you can't say that they'll run parallel, as in all of them doing perfectly well, but generally speaking, it's fine. And I agree, Marcus, I started doing the same thing. I took 5 royalty-free beats and songs off of Envato Elements, and I put them into my Premiere as a template, and I would pop those on each one in Premiere so that when I exported it to my phone, everything was there. Captions, music, everything. All I had to do was copy and paste my bottom, not caption, but my bottom description and hashtags. Yeah. And that was the only thing that I had to manually enter on each platform. That takes 2 minutes. The most time you're spending is making sure that the system has uploaded your video properly, and you move on to the next one.
And what I've done just for that as well, when you start getting into hashtags and even descriptions, I have a notes file in my phone. I just open that notes file because even that gets a bit bland. If I did 45 days of 45 posts and your mind gets a bit dumb and you're like, oof, so you can just go and snatch a series of that. You can copy and paste those in. That's a nice little thing to do as well. So maybe open your notes file and do that. Dan, you probably have a rhythm down about how you post and do it. Are there any programs that will allow you to post to all the platforms in one go, or you still feel it's just good to do it by hand?
It's good to do it by hand because, listen, the platforms definitely, like I think about these trending songs or a trending pop-up graphic, right? That's all well and good, right? But I think those are more distractions. The apps are always trying to get more people to use them. And a lot of times they'll have initiatives that will seem, oh, that's fun. Sure, if it's fun, do it. But if you're trying to just be catching on to the trend, they don't know what's going to be trendy. They're trying to figure it out too, right? These platforms, they don't know what the algorithm does, how it behaves.
Right.
The users know better than the people who made the algorithm.
Right, because it's a team of systems engineers. One guy did 1/10 of it, another guy did another 10th of it. So at the end of the day, they're kind of like, oh, why are these videos taking off? Oh, that may be my fault. I may have entered a 0 when I was supposed to put in a 1.
Yeah, 100%.
It could be that silly.
And, I think it's always good to, even if you are making one video, and not altering it much on each of these bespoke platforms, right? I would still upload it, take the care to upload it on that program. And like you said, take the time to make sure everything's buttoned up, because they will ding you if it's clear. If you've got a TikTok emblem blazed onto your video.
Oh, the watermark.
The watermark. Why would Instagram want that?
Right. They don't want it.
They don't want you to leave the platform. No. They want you to stay on Instagram.
100%.
A lot of times if you have a link to hey, check out this link, if it's very obvious in the middle of the screen, they don't want that. They want you to stay.
100%.
Well, and just to tap onto that too, with going on each platform, when it comes down to your hashtags, when you do type a hashtag in and you start the thing, it'll bring it up. There's 100 million people searching for this right now, or whatever it is. So if you blanket and it doesn't go against what I said, you should still have a nice little notes file, because you're going to have some. But, one of the things that I posted recently was dogs of TikTok, because it was I was looking for dog owners. And obviously for TikTok, dogs of TikTok had 100 million views, and dogs might have had half of that. So when I went to Instagram, obviously dogs of TikTok became dogs of Instagram, and that one had more than just dogs. So to dumb that down, the different hashtags might be specific to the platform by having the platform name in it, and you might gain a lot more viewership if you just take an extra second to do that.
Totally. Yeah. I think there's a lot of, there's a lot of things, a lot of best practices, like having the right hashtags, having the right, having cool music, having the captions right. There's a lot of things that can help your case, right? But I think those are all on the margins. I think the real battle is in the first 2.5 seconds of the video, because that's when you're going to lose people or not.
Yeah.
Right? They're not going to, if they're disinterested after 15 seconds, well, they already watched it.
Right.
Right? So I think you could have the best idea for a video or the best content in the world, but if the opening shot is no good, it's going to do terribly.
We experienced that when you ran the analytics on my videos. What did well and what did not. A lot of my videos I shot right here in this garage with nearly black walls, and it just didn't pop on screen. You're competing with people who are outside flipping a lawnmower over backwards, where they can clearly see what the dopamine hit they're about to get. Whereas me, I put up a wide angle camera right here, and I'm back there on a table demonstrating something. It's too much to look at. I'm not at front of screen. I'm not crowd facing, if you will. And it was just a natural ass deterrent to eyeballs. And it just has such a huge effect. And you think, oh, well, big deal. They can't quite see my face. I'm still doing something cool. If you're just deterring 15% of eyeballs, the algorithm catches that, and they said this video is probably dog crap. It can be that sensitive. So what we're going to do is repurp a lot of concepts maybe that I shot. You and I did it. We backed your trailer into this garage, remember? We shot a gang of content.
Yep.
Throwing shade on ratchets, throwing shade on D-rings, this anchor option, that. And none of it really did well. One of them did okay, and I was just wondering why. And one guy commented. That's why, Dan, you were so spot on in your interviews or your follow-ups. One guy commented, he said, dude, your videos are too dark, man. I can't even watch this garbage. And I'm like, okay, that's one guy. But it ends up he was right. And, it's it can be that fine of a detail is all that I'm getting at. But, yeah.
Well, you need to kind of you need to reimagine your idea of what makes good content, makes good viewing, right? Like a drone shot is beautiful, right? Almost unequivocally, you're going to love it.
It always looks good.
Always looks good. Great for TV shows, great for movies, great for commercials. Online, whatever you're looking at is going to be very far away. You know, maybe in the middle of the shot or the piece of content when you already kind of know what you're looking at. But as an opening shot, if you can't tell what you're looking at, you're not going to keep on looking at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the best example I thought of was, when someone's holding a red hot ball of steel over a big jar of mustard, you can pretty much gauge that you're about to be really satisfied with whatever cause and effect type of scenario is about to play out. By contrast, if it's a guy starting off with a speech that's a little too word heavy, hey guys, I'm Grant from TorkStrap and I'm about to show you, boom, you lost him. Right?
100%.
So don't introduce yourself. No one gives a shit who you are. Don't indulge yourself. Don't give some background. So my wife and I were talking the other day, and she thinks, boom, you lost him. Now, by contrast, instead of, hey, Grant, this is Grant with TorkStrap, here's what you do instead. Boom, hold a ratchet strap in front of their face and say something stupid. This bungee cord is costing you time and money. Well, what the he just called a ratchet strap a bungee cord for one. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to watch this whole 15-second video so I can go in the comments and see people hammering him for calling a ratchet strap a bungee cord. That was actually Dan's idea. I think that's genius, and we need to do that. With so I was talking to my wife the other day, and she agrees, no. Boom. My wife I slept on the couch last night because of XYZ. That's more arresting than trying to give some background that just gives some context but doesn't really give stimulation. And unfortunately, that's just how refined these audiences are. We always say it. Back in the old days, Charlie bit my finger, our buddy Terrence with his magnetic bracelet. Mm-hmm. You used to be able to get views just for being on the internet. Now it is a cutthroat environment. It is a cold, calculated event when you go viral. So trim the fat. That's the theme of that. Trim the fat.
Yeah, I like to think about movies. Like they say, like when you're writing a script, right? If this is your story, you want to start here. The common joke is that every student film starts off with somebody hitting an alarm clock, right?
Yes.
You don't need to see somebody wake up and brush their teeth to understand that their day is beginning, right? You have to assume that your audience is probably smarter than they are because people are naturally curious. People are watching these things to be stimulated, right? Yes. And so they want to be challenged. They want to be surprised, right? The way I think about the first image you should see should always be something very familiar, something that you recognize immediately, and something shocking about it, some twist, right? That'll make you do a double take because you're like, oh, I know what that is, but I'm not used to seeing it in that context, right? And I think for every subsequent shot, like when you're editing, if you're thinking in your mind, okay, the straight line is from A to B, well, then skip B, go to C, go to D, right?
They can fill in the B.
They'll fill in the B and the C.
Right.
Yeah. You want to surprise them, right?
Interesting. I love that. I want to touch on one thing before we go into our question of the day. I asked you in our interview, Dan, I asked a lot of people, you probably had the best answer, any gimmicks or hacks to social media. So with that, I want to ask about gimmicks and hacks. And I want to ask, or really touch on, giveaways and link in bios, things that maybe kind of worked a few years ago, but in my experience, that's dying too. So is there any hacks to get a big following fast on social media?
Well, I think it's about understanding the behavior of the viewers, right? So, for example, we were talking about trending songs on TikTok, right? The other apps have trending songs. Well, 90% of people never listen to any sound when they're looking at their phone, right? So spending all this time figuring out the best sound, well, that's going to be lost on most people, right? You still want the content to be enjoyable for everyone who's watching it. So sounds are just as important artistically, but it's not paramount compared to the opening visuals, right? Captions are great in that regard because people are not watching it with sound. And if if you're trying to get information out via dialogue or a monologue, via whatever, you want them to see it, right? And I think you just want them to watch till the end. So, yeah, maybe giveaways or, hey, check the link in my bio. Well, people have heard that. It's not a great Easter egg at the end of a video is to be told to click on somebody's link.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
But if at the end of the video, you can, have some nugget of information that they now know because they watched this whole video and you made your final point in the end, or if it's funny, or if it's satisfying, you just see the change, the delta from point A to point B. I think it's all storytelling, right? Go back to the people in caves or in these Greek rotundas telling stories, right? Storytelling still should hook you and it should pay off at the end. So I don't think, the gimmicks and the tricks are understanding users' behavior, and that you'll learn by using it and seeing what works and what doesn't. And I kind of have some institutional knowledge, so I'm able to say, hey, dark shots don't work at first as your first shot. You wouldn't know that until you tried and learned, right? But basic storytelling, having a good hook and satisfying ending, and then making the experience in the middle, keeping them guessing so they don't assume what the ending is going to be. You're going to get people watching the whole thing.
That's dope, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yep.
That's a lot of knowledge. We've already ran an hour. We've dropped a lot of knowledge. So without further ado, I want to pose one question that came in on the email. This is a long question, okay? We're going to take it bite by bite. So let me run through this question, and then I think we'll take it one piece at a time. Mr. R says, excuse me. Mr. R asks, fresh out of college, I just started a job and things are going well. I have an invention idea and I am on the fence about signing on with an A to Z inventing firm. I consulted with a patent attorney and was told my product was patentable. Oh. After seeing your content, I am leaning away from the invention company I was initially working with for patent research and thinking that the money could be better spent on production and marketing. I have some background in e-commerce and have had success running a print-on-demand Etsy store, but I've never truly found the one product that was a winner for me with dropshipping. We talk about that all the time. It's a never-ending battle. Mm-hmm. The invention I created is something I am too leery to talk about in depth mechanically because I don't want to reveal too much before it is patented, as well as at my corporate job, due to the social stigma surrounding such in that world. But the gist of it is a novel tobacco marijuana pipe packer for those with mobility issues in their hands or those who don't want to touch plant matter during their smoking experience. I have a prototype and have demoed with friends, and it is surprisingly effective. My next steps are applying for the patent. Then I will work on bringing it to market. A good friend of mine has a background in 3D printing and has offered to help with printing, which has reduced the production cost to around 60 cents per unit for 100 units. I found a good graphic designer for the boxes, now for around $250. He means graphic design for packaging. I just need to go about finding someone in China to make them, the boxes, I'm assuming. The total cost of production for 1,000 units, he gives some estimates on what it's all going to cost. Here are his questions. How can I scale this business without people at work potentially finding out? And does having a patentable product make it worth pursuing further? If I am going to continue on this venture, should I further allocate money to marketing, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Shopify sales funnels once I have a packaged finished product? In my mind, I think I have a really strong idea here, but I would love to hear your take.
Well, yeah, I'd start with the patentable. Does a patentable product make it worth pursuing further? I think a patent attorney is going to say you have a patentable product to almost anything that's not necessarily already patented. I don't think that holds any water on anything, because I think a very good product that has nothing to do with a patent would far, far, far do better than a product that, a crap product with it. So get out of the mindset that anybody told you it was patentable or not. aside from knowing whether a patent already exists on something exactly like you're doing, that you'd want to know.
Yeah, a patent attorney is not
they want your $9,000.
A business manager.
Right.
Yeah, that's all. So don't think about that.
Yeah.
Move on. If you can patent it later once you've proven that it works, great. That might be cool protection for you in the future.
Yeah.
As of right now, would people pull out their wallets? That's the only question you need to ask yourself.
Yeah.
Sorry, Marcus.
No, that was it for that one. So don't think because somebody told you that. So move on from there.
Sorry, it's the same with copyrights too.
Oh, it is.
If you write something, do not worry about getting a copyright. No one's going to steal it.
No, exactly.
It's a waste of money.
Yeah, we talk about that all the time. People think that their invention is a Rolls Royce sitting in the driveway with the keys on the seat, when in reality it's the dusty old furniture on the back patio. Nobody wants that.
Well, and that brings us to one of the next things is like that money that you were going to spend instantly on a patent can be far better spent on somebody like Dan, or on promotions, on what do you call it, ads and things like that. Get the ball rolling, start getting some money, then you can start spending some money. Don't go straight into the idea of spending all this money before your idea is even fleshed out, or people are interested in it. Mm-hmm. How can I scale the business without people at work potentially finding out? I mean, the truth is I feel like you can get really, really far before anybody's really going to see what you're doing, unless your name or your face is all over, your social media with it. I don't know.
Yeah,
what you
don't
guys
think that just because you make a video with 1 million views with your face on it, that Barb in the cubicle next to you is going to call your ass out. Barb is not your TA, target audience. Nobody at your office is, and this world is ginormous. So I wouldn't flatter yourself.
Maybe in a nice way.
Yeah, maybe on your personal LinkedIn, you're like, oh, I can't even use my LinkedIn for this because my boss is on my LinkedIn. Look, man, I sympathize with you. I was there. My wife's been there. We've all been there when we're trying to do a side hustle, what have you. At the end of the day, you just got to kind of nut up. You got to decide that you believe in this product enough that you're willing to risk getting caught, and then maybe having that uncomfortable conversation. And I had the conversation too. I mean, I put TorkStrap vinyls across my Ford F-150 and I rolled into the yard at AT&T because I had been doing it long enough to where I was ready to basically Mike Tyson this mofo, put the tattoo on my face and say, this is who I am. And about 6 months later, I quit. And everybody knew I was on my way out. It was what it was. I was in the union though. It's a little, maybe your corporate job is different, but you can get away with a ton under the radar, so don't think you're just going to get, burned out right away.
Well, and by the time I think that you would be big enough that somebody from your corporate job would know, you're probably already ready to step away from that corporate job because your business is big enough that, you're ready to move into full-time doing that. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
I have a question more for Dan on this. So let's just, I'll play devil's advocate and say the person, Mr. R, is not able to be on camera and won't do it. What would you say about creating some sort of mascot or some sort of persona that, doesn't include the person's name, face, job,
faceless channels?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's totally fine. Some of the most successful brands, legacy brands and digital brands have no real face to it, right? It's a point of view. You don't necessarily need to see a face, right? Faces are helpful for digital media, of course, because that's one of the most recognizable things that a human can see is another face. I would say, though, for Mr. R, I think if you're thinking of a business that's big enough where you're going to be uncomfortable with your coworkers knowing about it, then you're not going to be worried about using your personal network to get the word of mouth out, right? Mm-hmm. If you're using your own Instagram to sell product, that's fine, but that's limiting. That's a very small bucket of people, right? TikTok, for example, does not, it can be your first video and you can have 0 followers and it could get 10 million views.
Definitely.
It's not dependent on your existing network. Instagram and Facebook built up their algorithm and their users by having this very defined network that almost like is proof that somebody is because you're friends with them on LinkedIn on Instagram or Facebook, I've finished jobs before where like I've got to make sure I've got everyone's Facebook or Instagram. Otherwise, I'll never see them again, right? So one might be more afraid to say, hey, world, this is who I am now. I've got this tobacco product tattooed on my face. This is me. That might be scary to do on Instagram because not only is it people at work finding out, but maybe you have to explain it to your aunt and you're not ready yet, right? Sure. So I think if you're thinking of your personal network as the way you're going to grow this, I would think bigger.
Yeah, definitely. Think bigger. And the faceless channel is such a thing, You could set the camera near your chest facing out and just film your hands fiddling with your device. If it solves a problem, that's the focal point. I get hooked on, I think a lot of people have, these videos of this guy scrubbing down dirty-ass rugs in his shop. It's oddly satisfying videos. I could not tell you what that guy looks like because the focal point of that video is that rug. That guy could have a mustache. I would never know it. That guy could be whomever. So think of the focal point of your video and are you really the celebrity? I've gotten recognized once in public. Steven was with me. I've had over 30 videos with over 1 million views. I've been recognized in public one time. And that's because I was in my hometown where I was hashtagging Santa Clarita a lot, right? So you can get a ton of reach before you get burned out.
Well, and real quick to even focus more on Mr. R's scenario, he said his product is for people with disabilities to be able to do it. So I don't know if he himself has a disability and was thinking of being a spokesperson. But yeah, if not, then he most likely wouldn't want to be in there anyway because you'd want to see somebody with a hand disability. Mm-hmm. I guess you're rolling joints, or I forgot what it was. But then you're not going to be in it anyway. You're not going to tie your name to it anyway. So I think in your case, that's one of the last things you have to worry about because you're going to get people who are your target market to be in your videos to capture the target market.
For sure.
So yeah, what else do we have?
Well, just the last part of his question, I hope we didn't miss any of it. If I am to continue this venture, should I further allocate money into marketing, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and Shopify sales funnels once I have a packaged finished product? I want to say that, yes, you should market it. And the reason we're so keen on social media is that is the backbone of whatever TikTok meta push you're going to do with your paid ads. You can't just start a business, snap a photo of your product, put some infographics on it that say better, faster, safer, and run that as an ad because that's not enough in 2024. You have to post your content organically on the platforms and then decide which have done well, which is a great way to A/B test content or just market test your content. And then you hand that to your ads manager and say, bro, this did 9 million organically on TikTok. Let's push it in front of more eyeballs because it's also high converting. That's how you get that. And then you can put money behind it. So if you have one post that does pretty well and it educates the customers well on your product and seems that it might convert them into customers, then yeah, you run that as don't do TikTok ads to start. You're just going to do Meta, which is Instagram, Facebook, and you can also do Google ads. Hire an ads manager unless you're really number savvy, tech savvy. But yeah, you definitely need to do the push. Now, to go back to earlier, he said, my next step is applying for the patent. That kind of gives me a little bit of red flags because we don't even know if anybody's going to buy this thing yet. So to apply for a bona fide non-provisional patent, the lawyer's going to charge minimum $9,000. He's going to ask probably for all of it down, if not half of it down up front. You don't even know if someone would pull their wallet out for this yet. So what I would do is, and we have a whole episode about provisional patents. We talked to a patent attorney. I believe it was episode 22 or it was 22. But what I would do is file a provisional patent right before you're ready to launch your website. So what that does is, say on Monday, I'm going to launch my website. The Friday before that, I would file for the provisional patent. And once the USPTO acknowledges, hey, we got your packet, you're now patent pending. It literally means next to nothing, but you can legally now say you're patent pending. Now you can launch your website and push that product for up to a year with legal patent pending status. This provisional patent costs you no more than $130. once you know the product or idea has legs, at about the 8, 9, maybe even 10-month marks, make your decision. Okay, now I'm going to file full patent. Okay, but don't just drop $9,000 on a patent before you know if people will pay for it. That's reckless. That's irresponsible, and it's just not necessary.
And one thing to come back to the question real quick, that should I spend money on the different marketing things? One thing Grant and I both learned is in the beginning we did it ourselves. We didn't have to spend any money. Things were banging. Nowadays, you're almost, not only are you forced and necessary to start spending money in ads to get your product out there, but we've both seen that the more money you spend, the more money you do receive. And it's one of those expenses that it's a scary expense. It's real money. I started out by thinking, I can spend $5 or $2 a day. That doesn't give you crap. And then you get nothing and you don't get analytics with that. You're going to have to spend a real amount of money to start seeing big time real sales. So just get your mind wrapped around that this is going to be a real expense for you, and don't chintz it in the beginning. Don't be chintzy. Don't think you're going to save money, because you're just going to drag something out and you're not going to go anywhere with it.
For sure.
Yeah.
One part I skipped over on his question. The total cost of production for 1,000 units would be anywhere from $950 to $1,250 the first time around, due to the added $250 for the packaging designs, plus the cost of production of boxes. Retail value is anywhere from $10 to $20 depending on who you ask, so the profit margins are there. So let's break that down. First of all, you said earlier you're going to 3D print these, okay? That's a short-run method, and that's fine. I highly encourage that. If you can do them for 60 cents, $1 a piece, do that. Don't invest in molds and Chinese manufacturing yet. If you can print them pretty enough, if your buddy's 3D printer is fast enough to print 4 a day, great. You can have that done in whatever, 25 days. Or excuse me, 200 days. Math. And so next is, I love that. Next is the packaging designs, all that stuff. Yes, you're on the right track. Where I get a little bit of pause is retail value is anywhere from $10 to $20 depending on who you ask. So you think the profit margins are there. Yes, you're right. If you're buying something for $1 and selling it for $20, you have incredible profit margins. But it's very difficult to sell such a low order value item and make money due to all the costs to get that ad in front of someone's eyeballs. In the beginning, you can do it organically, as I did, as we've been preaching about on this episode. And yeah, that's a great return. When that runs dry, your average cost to acquire a customer may be $7, $8, $9, depending on how good you are at making ads. So what that means is for somebody to buy it, 250 people have to see your ad before one of them buys it, right? So your conversion rate is 1 out of 250 people. Facebook may charge you $10 for those 250 people to see that ad. So that's really where your margin is. So no, this isn't $1 turned into 20. This is $11 turned into 20. Still a reasonable margin, but think about, can I 3-pack this product? Maybe now I can sell it for $60 or even 2-pack, whatever. Can I 9-pack this product and sell it for $90? Now your margins really are good. Your average order value is great. You get 30 orders a day. It's much better to get 30 orders a day at $90 an order than at $20 an order.
Well, and also shipping. People forget about, including shipping in there,
Yes.
and also different things. But just to jump on that, you said your friend is 3D printing these. Just to get in your mindset, start the second he starts printing them, or the second you start getting out there, don't not look for manufacturers and start making those connections. Because if you want to scale this up, let's just say your product kicks ass and you sell 50 of your 100, there's no way in heck that he's going to be able to keep up with that. And the worst thing you can do is have 1,000 people wanting your product and you can't do it, and then you're just stuck. So while you're going, already get the stuff ready in the background to then be able to pounce if this thing starts going.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sweet, man. Well, the cameras are dying, so without further ado, let's put a wrap on episode 31. This was When to Ask for Help with Social Media. Thanks a lot, Dan, for coming in. We learned a ton from you. Steven, thanks for being here. If you're listening to the show, be sure to follow the show on whatever platform you may be on. If you're watching, like and subscribe on YouTube. Remember, guys, we took the punches so that you don't have to. Thanks. We'll see you next time.